Okay, everybody, we're in an old house right now, and we're here with Mike, and he's going to try to, or attempt to, I guess, wind some clocks. We have a fair amount of clocks, and you're going to go and wind them up.
Yeah, wind them up. I got my key to happiness right here.
That's your key to happiness?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't take much for you. Okay, go ahead. Wind this bay. Tell us about this clock.
All right. Well, this is a Seth Thomas timbre clock. Seth Thomas has been around since like 1840, and this clock's probably from about 1916 to 1920, somewhere around there. I don't know the exact year, but that's the period it's from. So what's special about this one? It's got 3 keyholes, if you notice here.
Yes.
There's 3 mainsprings in this clock. This is a clock that uses a chime movement. So in around 1909, Seth Thomas acquired the Sonora Chime Company, which was another company that made chime movements and music boxes and gramophones and all this other stuff. And they had patented a unique chime system that uses resonant bells in a wood case. And they designed a movement to strike Westminster chimes and Whittington chimes, and I think they also did a Canterbury chime. So Seth Thomas bought this company, and this movement they now had it owned as well. So they used this movement in Seth Thomas Sonora chime clocks and non-Sonora chime clocks, which use chime rods, which is this, but still uses that Sonora movement. So the 3rd mainspring in this clock is for that separate movement. The lever on the side over here is the chime silencer. So if you flip this lever down, you silence the chimes.
Oh, very good.
It holds a rod or a bar over the chime rod so that the movement is still running inside the clock every time on every quarter of the hour, but it's not hitting the chime rods. So the hammers are hanging in the air, and they're striking
right,
nothing.
Okay.
So first order of business here, since we're
first of all, when should you wind your clock?
once a week.
Once a week at a certain time, Sunday?
I usually do it Saturday.
Right,
Saturday evening is usually when I do it. In this case, we're doing it Saturday morning.
Okay.
The movements should run from 8 to 10 days, but they start to get goofy on the 8th day. At least I've encountered here, and that could be the case. That a lot of these movements have never been rebuilt. They're probably not at all in optimal running condition. This one's pretty good. This one I think had been gone through pretty well at some point.
All right, what's the age of the clock?
I'd say about 1918. So we're talking about a 100-year-old clock here.
All right, okay.
So first thing we always do is we do a time check to see how well we are keeping time. And this one has actually not gained or lost a minute this week. So this one's keeping very good time right now.
All right.
So we're going to wind up our springs and not make any adjustments.
Now these have arrows, okay, to show you which way to go.
You turn.
But usually, it's into the face.
Yeah.
That's usually the rule of thumb.
Except
for the chimes.
Except for the chime.
Which is prominently
this spring
marked.
on the left here is for the hour strike.
Now, how do you know how to go so far?
Well, it gets snug. That's when you know when to stop. That's fully wound.
All right.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
Of overwinding?
Overwinding it. If it's working, as the movement's functioning, you're not going to explode the thing. I mean, you should be cranking this thing down like you have a pair of vice grips in your hand, but... So that's the...
Snug, okay, very good. Okay.
So this is the hour strike. This is going to be the time spring, and you can usually tell because the hand will move as you... So that's your... This is your actual time mainspring. And that's wound. And now here is the chime spring. You're going to notice this key goes in pretty deep here. You have to kind of get it. There's actually a rod. There's 2 movements here. You have your main time movement and your chime movement behind it, which is why the case is so deep. And then there's a large square key sticking out of the chime movement that this meets into. And now this takes a long time to wind. This mainspring is about twice the length of the standard mainsprings.
Oh, there's some dinging in there.
And we're not going to make any regulation adjustments, but that's what this adjustment's for here. Slow,
Right,
fast.
fastest. Yeah.
And the other end of the key fits in here.
Oh, okay.
See?
Where do you put the key so it don't get lost?
Well, I only have one key. Well, I have a couple keys, but this is the key I use for almost every clock, so I just keep it on a shelf.
Well, let me ask you this. If you ever see the keys, you collect them, right? Because they're hard to find.
Some of them, well, you can buy them brand new. This is like on eBay for $5, brand new.
Oh, okay.
They make reproductions of them.
All right.
So we're done with this one. We're going to go to the next one, which is over here. This is also a Seth Thomas, and if you notice, it's a complete miniature.
No, almost.
I mean, they shrunk down the beveled glass, they shrunk down the hands, even the little pin going through in the center. It's a very faithful reproduction of a cathedral, or no, this is a beehive style case.
Uh-huh.
So if I had a beehive style clock on the mantle, it would look just like it, except it's
Okay, yeah.
quite shrunken. But here in this case, it's just this. Is our,
Which is hard to see.
and it's an 8-day movement in this little clock.
Okay. And this makes any noise?
No, no chimes.
No chimes.
So this clock is from about 1910.
See, I'm calling it noise, but I guess other people would not
We're gonna do
appreciate
a time
that.
check.
But
It's 11:14. Put that to 11:14. It's still ticking. So this one's done.
all
All
right.
right. Now we're gonna move on to the thermostat clock, which has a different key.
Is that where the key's supposed to be, or you just put that there?
I put it there. It is cut out into a square there, so I mean it seems to fit pretty well in that spot.
Okay, tell us about the Honeywell here.
So this is a Minneapolis Honeywell thermostat. They started making these during World War I, and they made these probably till about 1930. This is, everybody says, oh, I want to get an energy-saving thermostat for my house.
Right. This is the first.
This is the
type.
first one.
I'd say.
So they first bought clocks from another company, and then they realized that they could do a better job making a more accurate clock for their thermostat. So they designed their own joule movement clock. It's a 7 joule movement, 8 days. It has 2 mainsprings in it. One mainspring is for a time movement, and the other mainspring, instead of being a chime movement, it's for the temperature change. So it's an escapement that changes the temperature. So you set your times that you want your temperature to go up or down here, and then when the little edge of this arm hits that pin, this goes around 180 degrees, and that will change the temperature here. So it slides on there, and then you can adjust how far you want to throw it by turning these here. Using the very same clock key, you can adjust your temperature in here too.
Okay.
So, and since it's summertime, we haven't been winding the escapement. We've just been winding the clock portion of this. So,
And this is in service right now. It still works.
Still
running,
works.
Running a steam boiler down in the basement
Yeah.
here.
and we'll do it. It's 11:15. I think it's 11:16. So we're 1 minute off. This clock has no outward adjustment of timekeeping, but it loses about a minute a week, which is pretty good, I would say. It's a consistent minute a week loss. So there you are, Minneapolis.
And the year of this,
Honeywell.
you said
This
from the
thermostat,
20s?
well, this one's from about 1927, 1928.
Right. So this might have been here when this house was built in
Might have.
26,
25.
25. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, the next victim.
Yes, you're standing in my light, but okay. Let me get over here. And I'll stand in my light.
All right, there you go.
What the heck?
So this is a this is a Gilbert kitchen clock. Technically.
Okay.
It's in a dining room, of course, but it's actually a kitchen clock, and this was built in about 1880. Now it's a 8-day movement. It's all a I believe it's called it's got a banjo style. That's not a chime. It's a gong in it.
Right.
It's very loud. And
Are some silenced and some are not in here? Or
no, they're all
they're all
everybody's
letting loose, huh?
anybody that can chime chimes in here.
Okay.
Now, there's the original key for this one, so I actually have the original key with this one.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, there
But
you go.
I use this key fits all of them, so.
There you go.
The pendulum in this one, instead of having a speed regulation on the dial, the pendulum is a regulator. There's you can see what's left of a little hand on the front there. The hand is supposed to go all the way to the edge, and it has graduations around it. And you turn the knurled nut on the bottom, and the hand turns, and it's moving a
How
weight.
fast, how slow you would be,
It's
right?
moving a weight up and down on the inside of it.
Oh, wow.
So this one we're trying to get it to keep better time. It was running fast. So, and of course there's a lot of play in the minute hand on this thing, so you have to really be careful. And Gilbert was basically what was considered to be a more economical clock company. It's not. Seth Thomas was like kind of the Cadillac of clocks, or American clocks. So this time-wise is good right now.
Okay. So that's all done.
That one's done. All right, we'll move on to probably one of the, I guess, piece de resistance of the collection here.
Okay. Now this thing looks like it's, what, from the 20s?
Nope.
What? What is it from?
No, this is probably from about 1912, 1914.
Okay.
So this is also a Seth Thomas.
Right.
This is a Seth Thomas Sonora chime. So as I mentioned earlier, Seth Thomas bought the Sonora Chime Company and turned around, 1907, 1908. And this is an incarnation of the actual Sonora chimes with the chime movement with the Seth Thomas clock movement. This clock is in a solid brass case. Back in early, 1912, 1913 dollars, a clock like this probably would have cost about $80.
Which
so this was a lot of money for a clock.
Yeah, that's
Now,
it's like a couple of months' pay there, huh?
yeah. So just like the other clock, 3 springs and
Right.
there's speed adjustment there.
And they're in the exact same position. It's almost
Yeah.
the exact same movement, I guess.
It
right?
is the same time movement.
Yes.
I'm going to spin this one around so you can see the back of it, because I think this is probably worth seeing it. This clock, I think, has sticky mainsprings in it, which, when it was really humid last week, I heard it goes bang one day and then it stopped. I think the mainspring's got some dried up lubricant on it, and when it gets towards the end of the week, so it really probably needs to be serviced further at some point, where the mainsprings are unwound and cleaned and re-lubricated before some damage is done. Okay, so alright, we'll spin this around. You can see that this thing weighs about like 16, 18 pounds. It is not light.
Why would you want to go in there like that with the mechanism and everything?
So,
All right, is this the one that had to be repaired?
no, the one in the living room had to be repaired.
And then what we're talking about is those little hammers had to be replaced, right?
I had to replace one of the hammers, and in there, instead of, so these are bells, if you notice, they're round bells.
Yeah, okay, yes.
So when they drop, it gives a resonant
Right.
bell sound. The other room has the same movement, except it has rods going across, chime rods.
Right. And it looks like two separate units completely.
Two completely separate movements.
Right.
The one, the movement towards the rear is the time movement, and then this is what we would call the chime
And
movement.
there's two triggers in there that.
Right. They commingle with each other. So the strike is coming from the actual clock movement, which is that mainspring on the right, and you can see the strike hammer is coming off of the main movement. So there's a lever in the back. As the clock gets close to a quarter of an hour, this lever
Cocks it, right.
Cocks.
Yeah.
this chime movement.
Ready
It
to go.
cocks it, and then when it gets to the quarter exactly, it releases a lever, releases it, which allows the chime movement to run. And it runs, does its thing for each quarter, half, 3/4. When you get to the hour, at the completion of the hour, movement, there's another lever at the back of this movement that swings over that actuates the strike back on the original main movement.
Okay.
So it's a fairly complex arrangement between the two movements, but it does seem to work quite well. And like I said, the Sonora movement, they had patented these bells with this wood box. This box has got chambers in it.
For the sound.
For the sound.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay, what's next?
Next, we'll do the Ansonia movement. So, this clock is called an Ansonia Monterey. Now, like Seth Thomas, Ansonia was probably one of your better clockmakers of the era, but much more short-lived. They got sold to a Russian company in the 1920s and ceased operation of building clocks in the U.S. and started making clocks in Russia for a while. I don't know what the name of the company became at that point. But Ansonia Clock Company was a New York-based clock company, and for a good part of their existence, they were made in Brooklyn.
Right, they have the A right there.
And it says here at the bottom, see?
I don't know if I could read that, but okay, yeah.
Now this is what would be called an open escapement. You can see the escapement running in the front there.
Okay, yeah.
And this is just does a hour strike and a half-hour strike. It's considered to be a cathedral strike. And this one isn't going to be doesn't going to need too much winding because just did some service to this clock during the week.
And the big hand is now in the way of the...
Yeah, well, I think we're all right.
Ooh, yeah, sneak that in there.
Yeah, that's pretty tight because I just didn't work on this. Okay.
All right.
Oh, it's so tight, we stopped it. There we go. All right. And then the last clock is going to require a chair. So, if I can pull it.
A chair, huh? Where's this clock? Oh!
Not the last clock. I take that back.
A what?
That's the last clock.
Next to the last clock. Looks like a ship's clock.
It is a ship's clock. It's actually more technically a boiler room clock.
Wing.
And it's running fast, so I'm trying to get this one to be a better timekeeper. It's been a challenge.
And this, of course, does not chime.
No, this is a non-chimer. So this is a Seth Thomas number 10 movement inside of a ship's clock case. Seth Thomas made these cases for various companies. This one was made for the Ashcroft Manufacturing Company. If anybody's into like HVAC, they've probably heard of the brand Ashcroft because they still make gauges to this very day. This was an earlier iteration of that company, which ceased to exist in 1917. So we know that this clock is from 1917 or older. And it's an 8-day movement. It has two mainsprings. Why does it have two mainsprings when there's no chime? It's because it's a balance wheel movement. So there's two mainsprings counteracting the balance wheel. It's supposed to give better accuracy. And it's supposed to make the clock shock-proof.
And is this an 8-day?
It's an 8-day. So it's supposed to, which makes it ideal for ship's conditions. The ship's swaying around and hitting and banging.
Right, okay.
The clock's supposed to keep ticking. Unfortunately, this one having difficulty getting to keep good time. It's still running fast. The hairspring, I think, was cut and short on this thing, so I don't have a good swing of adjustment on it. They need a new hairspring. So what's our time right now? It's 11:28.
Okay.
All right, you got one more clock.
One more clock.
To the lower level.
The lower level, get out of town. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Very nice.
So, this is a Coca-Cola clock, obviously.
Which we can't see too well, but okay.
The lights are warming up.
Warming up.
Well, we got some CFLs here. You can actually hit the one behind you there. It gets a little more extra light. So, this Coca-Cola clock was made by the New Haven Clock Company. They were contracted by Coca-Cola, I think, as early as the 1890s to start making clocks for them. And
Right.
a clock like this would be in a general store of the era, you know,
Right, okay.
maybe later on a drugstore. This one I think is from, I think it's from around 1900. Now, the glass is newer, I believe. There's no imperfections in this glass, and I think this Coca-Cola logo was not really widely used at that point in time yet.
It came out after the turn of the century.
Yeah, so I think somebody made new glass for this at some point, and it's just why we have.
Right.
Now, it's an 8-day movement. This is a regulator movement, which is fairly accurate because of the long pendulum.
All right, what is this under here? Is this
That's
instructions? Oh, that's just who New Haven Clock.
Yeah, and it also shows you there's number of graduations there, which shows.
Oh, yeah, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Right, okay, go ahead, do your thing.
So this one shouldn't need too much winding because this was also just service. So
Now, is that the correct way? You're winding that.
yeah,
That's away from the face.
yeah.
Well, how do you know that? I mean,
It's just you got to know.
you just got to know, huh? It's not the rule of thumb on this clock
Nope.
for some reason. I guess well, for whatever reason.
And if we want to get into, do you want to do a separate thing on electric clocks? Because we got some of those here too.
Oh, okay. Maybe that'd be our next video, huh?
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks
right.
for showing all the clocks off. I guess we should hang out maybe later on and listen to them. Okay.